Jason Statham sat on his back porch, watching the sunrise paint the Hollywood hills in golden colors. Next to him lay Max, a beautiful German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes and a thick black and tan coat. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, always alert, always protective of his human companion. 7 years had passed since that rainy October day when Jason first walked into the Los Angeles animal shelter. He had not planned to get a dog that day. He was just visiting to make a donation after finishing his latest action movie. But then he saw Max, barely 8 weeks old, sitting alone in a corner cage while other puppies played together. The small puppy looked up at Jason with those same intelligent eyes, and something clicked between them instantly. The shelter worker, an elderly woman named Betty, had told Jason that Max was different from the other dogs. He was calm, thoughtful, and seemed to understand people in a special way. She said Max had been waiting for the right person, someone who would give him purpose and love. When Jason knelt down and extended his hand through the cage bars, Max walked over slowly and gently licked his fingers. That simple gesture sealed their fate together. From that first day, Max became Jason's shadow. The dog learned quickly that Jason's life was different from other people. There were early morning workouts, long days on movie sets, and constant travel. Max adapted to everything with remarkable intelligence. He learned to sit quietly during filming, understanding somehow that his human was working. He became a favorite among cast and crew members, who often brought him treats and toys. Every morning at 5:30, Jason and Max would begin their daily routine. They would run together through the winding trails of the Hollywood Hills, Max keeping perfect pace beside Jason, whether they ran fast or slow. The dog never needed a leash on these runs. He stayed close to Jason's side, occasionally darting ahead to investigate an interesting smell, but always returning within seconds. After their run, they would return home where Max would wait patiently while Jason showered and prepared for work. The dog had learned Jason's schedule perfectly. He knew when Jason was leaving for a short day of filming and when he would be gone for weeks shooting in distant locations. On travel days, Max would become quieter, as if he understood their separation was coming. When Jason worked on movie sets, Max had his own special place in Jason's trailer. The trailer was equipped with a comfortable bed, water bowls, and toys. But Max rarely played with the toys when Jason was filming. Instead, he would lie on his bed and wait, sometimes for 12 or 14 hours, until Jason returned. Other actors and crew members often commented on Max's unusual patience and loyalty. The bond between them went deeper than typical pet ownership. Jason found himself talking to Max about everything, sharing his thoughts about work, relationships, and life. The dog would listen with those intelligent eyes, occasionally tilting his head as if he truly understood every word. In return, Max provided Jason with unconditional love and companionship that he had never experienced before. Evenings were their special time together. After dinner, they would sit in Jason's living room, where Max would rest his large head on Jason's lap while they watched television. Jason would stroke Max's soft fur and feel the stress of long workdays melting away. These quiet moments were precious to both of them. Max also served as Jason's informal security system. The dog had an uncanny ability to sense when something was not right. He would position himself between Jason and strangers who made him uncomfortable. His protective instincts were strong but never aggressive unless absolutely necessary. Friends and family members often remarked that Jason and Max were like two parts of the same soul. They communicated without words, understood each other's moods, and provided mutual comfort during difficult times. Jason had never imagined that loving a dog could be so deep and meaningful. As the sun climbed higher that morning, Jason scratched behind Max's ears and smiled. He had no way of knowing that this peaceful moment would be one of their last together for a very long time. Dark forces were already planning to tear them apart, and their perfect bond was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. Tuesday morning started like any other day for Jason Statham. He woke up at 5 in the morning, stretched his muscles, and looked down at Max, who was already awake on his bed beside Jason's. The German shepherd's tail wagged gently as their eyes met. Jason smiled and patted Max's head before getting ready for what would become the worst day of his life. The movie set was busy that morning. Jason was filming an intense car chase scene for his new action movie. He had practiced the stunts for weeks and felt confident about the day's work. Max sat in his usual spot in Jason's trailer, comfortable on his favorite blanket. Before leaving for the first take, Jason knelt down and scratched behind Max's ears. "I'll be back soon, buddy," Jason said softly. Max looked at him with those intelligent brown eyes and seemed to understand. Jason had no idea these would be the last normal words he would speak to his beloved companion for a very long time. The morning filming went perfectly. Jason completed 3 difficult driving sequences without any problems. The director was happy with the shots, and the crew was in good spirits. Around 11:30, Jason was preparing for the 4th and most dangerous stunt of the day. He was adjusting his safety harness when he saw Sarah running toward him. Sarah was Jason's personal assistant and had worked with him for 4 years. She was always calm and professional, handling Jason's busy schedule with skill and patience. But now her face was pale white and tears were streaming down her cheeks. She was running so fast that she stumbled and nearly fell. "Jason," she called out breathlessly as she reached him. "Something terrible has happened. Something really terrible." Jason felt his stomach drop. Sarah never acted like this unless something was seriously wrong. He quickly removed his safety harness and grabbed her shoulders gently. "What is it, Sarah? What happened?" he asked, trying to stay calm even though panic was rising in his chest. Sarah struggled to catch her breath. She wiped tears from her eyes, but more kept coming. The entire film crew had stopped working and was watching them with concerned faces. "It's Max," she finally managed to say. "Someone took Max from your house." Jason felt like the world had stopped spinning. He stared at Sarah's face, hoping he had misunderstood her words, but her expression told him everything he needed to know. His worst nightmare was becoming reality. "What do you mean someone took him?" Jason asked, his voice becoming louder. "How is that possible? The house has security cameras, and Maria was supposed to be there." Maria was Jason's housekeeper who had worked for him for 3 years. She was trustworthy and loved Max almost as much as Jason did. She would never let anything happen to the dog if she could help it. Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "Maria called me 20 minutes ago. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her." 3 men broke into the backyard around 10 o'clock. They knew exactly what they were doing, Jason. One man kept Maria busy at the front door, asking about gardening services, while the other 2 went to the back and took Max. Jason's hands began shaking with anger and fear. Max was not just any dog. He was family. He was Jason's best friend and constant companion. The thought of strangers taking him was unbearable. Did Maria see their faces? Did she get a license plate number? Jason demanded. "She saw everything on the security cameras after they left," Sarah replied. 2 men grabbed Max and put him in a white van. He tried to fight them, Jason, but they were ready for him. They had some kind of rope or leash. Jason felt rage building inside his chest like a fire. Someone had planned this carefully. They had watched his house and learned his schedule. They knew when he would be at work and when Max would be vulnerable. "Where is Maria now?" Jason asked. "She's at your house with the police. They arrived 15 minutes ago and are reviewing all the security footage." Jason was already walking toward his car before Sarah finished speaking. Nothing else mattered now except finding Max and bringing him home safely. Jason drove through the streets of Beverly Hills like a man possessed. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Every red light felt like torture. Every slow car in front of him made his anger grow stronger. All he could think about was Max and whether his beloved dog was scared or hurt. When Jason arrived at his house, 3 police cars were parked in his driveway. Officers were walking around his backyard, taking photographs and collecting evidence. Maria sat on his front steps, crying into her hands. She looked up when she heard Jason's car and ran toward him, with fresh tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Jason, I am so sorry," Maria sobbed in her thick accent. "I tried to stop them, but they tricked me. They knew exactly what they were doing." Jason hugged Maria gently, even though his heart was breaking. He knew this was not her fault. The men who took Max had planned everything carefully. They were professionals, not random criminals. Detective Rodriguez, a serious-looking man in his 40s, approached Jason with a notebook in his hand. He had been investigating pet thefts in Los Angeles for over 10 years and had seen many cases like this one. "Mr. Statham, I need to ask you some questions," Detective Rodriguez said. "The security footage shows 3 men working together. This was definitely planned in advance. Do you have any enemies who might want to hurt you through your dog?" Jason thought carefully about the detective's question. As a famous actor, he received strange letters and messages from fans regularly. Most were harmless, but some were disturbing. However, he could not think of anyone who would steal Max to hurt him personally. "I get weird fan mail sometimes, but nothing that seemed dangerous," Jason replied. "What about ransom? Have they contacted me asking for money?" "Not yet," Detective Rodriguez answered. "But pet theft for ransom is becoming more common in wealthy neighborhoods. We expect they will call you within 24 hours if that's their plan." Jason felt frustrated listening to the detective talk about waiting. Max was somewhere out there, probably scared and confused. Every minute that passed made Jason more desperate to take action himself. "What can I do right now?" Jason asked. "I can't just sit here and wait for them to call." Detective Rodriguez understood Jason's feelings, but had to follow proper procedures. "We're doing everything we can, Mr. Statham. We've sent the security footage to our tech team for analysis. We're checking with local animal shelters and veterinary offices. We've also contacted pet stores that sell German Shepherds to see if anyone has been asking suspicious questions." But Jason knew the police investigation would take time, and time was something Max might not have. That afternoon, Jason made several important phone calls. First, he called his lawyer to discuss legal options. Then he called his accountant to arrange access to large amounts of cash in case ransom demands came. Most importantly, Jason called Marcus Thompson, a private investigator who had worked with several Hollywood celebrities. Marcus was a former military man who specialized in finding missing persons and stolen property. He had a reputation for getting results when the police could not. Marcus arrived at Jason's house within 2 hours. He was a tall, muscular man with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. He studied the security footage carefully and asked detailed questions about Jason's daily routines and Max's behavior. "This was definitely professional," Marcus concluded after reviewing all the evidence. "They watched your house for days or maybe weeks. They knew your schedule, and they knew your dog's habits. This suggests they're part of a larger operation." Jason felt his heart sink. What kind of operation? Marcus looked directly into Jason's eyes with a serious expression. "There are several possibilities. Dog fighting rings pay good money for strong breeds like German Shepherds. There's also a black market for selling purebred dogs to wealthy buyers who don't ask questions. Either way, we need to act fast." That evening, Jason and Marcus developed their plan. They would not wait for ransom calls or police procedures. They would start their own investigation immediately, using Jason's resources and Marcus's connections to search every possible location where Max might be held. Jason barely slept that first night after Max disappeared. Every hour that passed felt like a lifetime. He kept checking his phone, hoping for a ransom call or some news from Detective Rodriguez. But his phone remained silent except for messages from worried friends and family members. Early the next morning, Marcus arrived at Jason's house with disturbing news. He had spent the entire night making phone calls to his contacts in law enforcement and private security. What he discovered made Jason's blood run cold. I've been asking around about recent dog thefts in Los Angeles, Marcus said as he sat across from Jason in the living room. The pattern is always the same. Professional teams target expensive purebred dogs from wealthy neighborhoods. But these dogs are never returned for ransom money. Jason felt his stomach twist into knots. What happens to them then? Marcus hesitated before answering. He had seen many terrible things during his years as an investigator, but he knew this news would devastate Jason. There's an underground network operating throughout Southern California, Marcus explained carefully. They steal dogs for illegal fighting rings. German shepherds like Max are especially valuable because of their size, strength, and intelligence. The words hit Jason like physical blows. The thought of gentle, loving Max being forced to fight other dogs was unbearable. Max had never shown aggression toward any living creature. He was protective but never violent. "Are you sure about this?" Jason asked, hoping Marcus was wrong. "I spoke with Detective Maria Santos from the LAPD Animal Cruelty Unit," Marcus replied. "She's been tracking this network for 2 years. They operate in abandoned warehouses and private properties around the city. The dogs are trained using cruel methods to make them aggressive and fight for survival." Jason stood up and began pacing around his living room. His hands were shaking with rage and fear. Every minute Max spent with those criminals was torture for both of them. "How do we find them?" Jason demanded. "How do we get Max back?" Marcus pulled out a folder filled with photographs and documents. "Detective Santos gave me addresses of locations they've raided in the past. Most are empty now, but criminals often return to areas they know well. We'll start by visiting these places and asking questions." That afternoon, Jason and Marcus began their search in the industrial areas of downtown Los Angeles. They visited empty warehouses, abandoned factories, and run-down buildings where illegal activities might take place. Most locations were truly abandoned, but some showed signs of recent activity. At their fourth stop, an old auto repair shop, they found their first real clue. The building appeared empty from the outside, but Marcus noticed fresh tire tracks in the dirt parking lot. More importantly, he found several dog toys scattered behind the building. Jason picked up a rubber ball that looked exactly like one of Max's favorite toys. His heart pounded as he examined it for any sign that Max had been there recently. Someone was definitely keeping dogs here, Marcus observed as he studied the ground carefully. "Look at these chain marks on the concrete, and there's still fresh water in some of these bowls." They searched the entire building but found no dogs or people. However, Marcus discovered something important. In a back office, someone had left behind a piece of paper with an address written on it. The address was in East Los Angeles, in a neighborhood known for criminal activity. "This could be where they moved the dogs," Marcus said, showing Jason the paper. "But we need to be very careful. If this is really a dog-fighting operation, these people are dangerous. They won't hesitate to hurt us if they feel threatened." Jason studied the address and memorized it completely. He didn't care how dangerous these criminals were. They had taken the most important thing in his life, and he would do whatever necessary to get Max back safely. "When do we go there?" Jason asked. Marcus looked at his watch. "Tonight. Dog fighting usually happens after dark, when there's less chance of being discovered by police. If Max is there, that's when we'll find him." Jason felt a mixture of hope and terror as they prepared for what could be their most dangerous mission yet. That evening, Jason and Marcus drove through the dark streets of East Los Angeles toward the address they had found. Jason wore old clothes and a baseball cap to disguise his famous face. His heart pounded with nervousness and excitement as they got closer to what might be Max's location. The address led them to an old warehouse district where many buildings stood empty and broken. Streetlights were few and dim, creating long shadows that could hide anything. Marcus parked their car several blocks away so they could approach the target building on foot without being noticed. "Remember," Marcus whispered as they walked through the darkness, "we're just looking tonight. If we see Max, we don't try to rescue him immediately. We need to understand how many people are guarding him and what kind of security they have." Jason nodded, but inside, He knew that seeing Max in danger might make him do something reckless. The thought of his beloved dog suffering made it hard to think clearly about strategy and safety. They reached the warehouse and crouched behind a row of abandoned cars. The building looked empty from the outside, but they could hear sounds coming from within. There were voices, music, and something that made Jason's blood freeze, barking and growling from multiple dogs. Marcus pointed to a broken window on the side of the building. "We can look through there without being seen." They crept carefully toward the window, staying low and moving slowly. Jason's military training from action movies had never felt more real than it did at that moment. Every sound seemed dangerously loud in the quiet night. When they reached the window, Jason peered through the dirty glass and saw something that made him sick to his stomach. Inside the warehouse, dozens of people stood around a circular area marked with wooden barriers. In the center, two large dogs were fighting while the crowd shouted and placed bets on the outcome. The dogs were covered in blood and foam, their eyes wild with fear and pain. They fought not because they wanted to, but because they had been trained to believe their lives depended on it. Around the edges of the warehouse, Jason could see cages filled with more dogs waiting their turn. "This is definitely the place," Marcus whispered. "Can you see Max anywhere?" Jason searched every cage he could see from their position, but the lighting inside was poor, and there were too many shadows. Some dogs were lying down, some were pacing nervously, and others sat quietly as if they had given up hope completely. "I need to get closer," Jason whispered back. "I need to see all the cages." Marcus grabbed Jason's arm firmly. "That's too dangerous. There are at least 30 people in there, and probably more we can't see. If they catch us, we'll never get Max back." Jason knew Marcus was right, but every fiber of his being wanted to rush into that warehouse and search for his dog. Instead, he forced himself to watch and learn. He studied the layout of the building, counted the number of guards, and looked for possible escape routes. After 20 minutes of observation, they saw something that changed everything. A man in an expensive suit walked into the warehouse accompanied by 2 bodyguards. Unlike the rough-looking crowd, this man was clearly the boss of the operation. People stepped aside respectfully as he passed. The boss walked directly to a section of cages that Jason and Marcus couldn't see from their window. He spoke to someone there for several minutes, pointing at different cages and nodding his head. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call that lasted about 5 minutes. "That's Vincent Cross," Marcus whispered with recognition. "I've seen his photograph in police files. He runs illegal gambling operations all over California. If he's here, this is much bigger than just dogfighting." After Vincent finished his phone call, he walked toward the exit with his bodyguards. As they passed near the window where Jason and Marcus were hiding, they could hear part of his conversation. "The special dogs are ready for next week's event," Vincent said to one of his men. "Make sure they're kept separate from the regular fighters. Our VIP clients are paying premium prices, and they expect premium quality." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Max was probably one of those special dogs being prepared for something even worse than regular fighting. They needed to act fast before Max was moved to another location or sold to dangerous people. As Vincent and his men drove away, Jason and Marcus retreated to their car to plan their next move. They now knew where the dogfighting was happening, but they still hadn't seen Max. More importantly, they had learned that time was running out. Whatever Vincent had planned for next week, it probably meant Max would disappear forever. "We need help," Marcus said as they drove back toward Jason's house. "This is too big for just the 2 of us to handle." Jason stared out the car window at the city lights, his mind racing with desperate plans. "What kind of help?" "I know some people who used to work with me in the military," Marcus replied. "They're good at this kind of operation. But Jason, once we do this, there's no going back. We'll be breaking serious laws and putting ourselves in real danger." Jason didn't hesitate with his answer. "I don't care about the danger. Max is my family. I'll do whatever it takes to bring him home safely. Marcus spent the next day making careful phone calls to his former military contacts. By evening, he had assembled a small team of 3 men who specialized in dangerous rescue operations. They met at Jason's house after dark to plan what they were calling Operation Max. Tommy Rodriguez was a former Navy SEAL who now worked as a security consultant. He was short and muscular with tattoos covering both arms. Despite his tough appearance, he spoke softly and seemed genuinely concerned about rescuing Max. David Kim had been an Army Ranger and was now a private investigator like Marcus. He was quiet and analytical, the kind of person who thought through every detail before taking action. He brought maps and technical equipment to help with their mission. The third man was Carlos Santos, a former police officer who had left the force after getting frustrated with corruption. He knew the criminal networks in Los Angeles better than anyone and understood how Vincent Cross operated his illegal businesses. Vincent Cross is not just running dogfights, Carlos explained as they gathered around Jason's dining room table. He's connected to drug dealing, illegal gambling, and human trafficking. The dogfighting is just one small part of his empire. Jason listened carefully as Carlos spread out photographs and documents showing Vincent's various properties around Los Angeles. There were warehouses, private homes, and even a legitimate restaurant that served as a front for his criminal activities. The problem is that Vincent moves his operations frequently, Carlos continued. He never keeps valuable assets like expensive stolen dogs in the same place for more than a few days. By now, Max has probably been moved to a different location. This news hit Jason like a punch to the stomach. They had found the dog-fighting warehouse, but Max might no longer be there. Every day that passed made their mission more difficult and dangerous. Tommy studied the maps and photos carefully before speaking. We need to get inside Vincent's organization. Someone needs to pose as a wealthy client interested in buying fighting dogs or placing large bets. All eyes turned to Jason. As a famous actor with obvious wealth, he was the perfect person to attract Vincent's attention. But getting close to Vincent also meant putting himself in extreme danger. I can do it, Jason said without hesitation. What would I need to say or do? David pulled out his laptop and showed Jason several websites that advertise illegal dogfighting events to wealthy clients. The language was coded, but the meaning was clear. Rich people paid thousands of dollars to watch dogs fight and to purchase trained fighting animals. You would need to attend several smaller events first to build credibility, David explained. Vincent doesn't trust new clients immediately. You'd have to prove you're serious by spending money and showing you don't care about the dog's welfare. The thought of pretending not to care about animal suffering made Jason feel sick, but he knew it was necessary to save Max. He would have to become a completely different person, someone cold and cruel enough to fit into Vincent's world. Over the next 3 days, Marcus used his contacts to get Jason invited to a small dog fighting event in a private warehouse. Jason practiced his new identity as Richard Blake, a wealthy businessman who had made his fortune in questionable ways and enjoyed cruel entertainment. When the night of the first event arrived, Jason felt more nervous than he had ever felt before any movie role. This was not acting for cameras and directors. This was acting to fool dangerous criminals who would kill him if they discovered his true identity. The warehouse was smaller than the first one they had observed, but the scene was just as disturbing. About 20 people stood around watching 2 pit bulls fight while betting large sums of money on the outcome. Jason forced himself to watch and even placed a few bets to appear interested. After the fights ended, a man named Eddie approached Jason. Eddie worked for Vincent and was responsible for recruiting new high-paying clients. He was impressed that Jason had bet over $5,000 without seeming concerned about losing money. You might be interested in our premium events, Eddie said quietly. We have special dogs and special arrangements for clients who can afford the best. Jason played his role perfectly, showing interest but not appearing too eager. What kind of special arrangements? Private events with rare breeds and custom matches, Eddie replied. The entry fee is $50,000. but the experience is unforgettable. If you're interested, I can arrange a meeting with my boss." Jason's heart raced with excitement and fear. This was exactly the opportunity they needed to get close to Vincent and find Max. But he also knew that one mistake could cost him his life. "I'm very interested," Jason replied casually. "When can we meet?" Eddie smiled and handed Jason a business card with only a phone number on it. "Call this number tomorrow at exactly 3 o'clock. Don't call before or after that time. If you're serious about joining our exclusive group, my boss will want to meet you personally." As Jason drove home that night, he knew there was no turning back. Tomorrow's phone call would either bring him closer to rescuing Max, or it would put him directly in the path of one of Los Angeles's most dangerous criminals. Jason made the phone call at exactly 3 o'clock the next afternoon. His hands were shaking as he dialed the number Eddie had given him. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered and told him to be at a restaurant in Malibu at 8 o'clock that evening. She gave him specific instructions about where to park and what to say to the hostess. That evening, Jason arrived at the restaurant dressed in an expensive suit and driving a rented Ferrari to look like the wealthy criminal he was pretending to be. The restaurant was upscale and busy, the perfect place for a secret meeting to blend in with normal business dinners. Jason told the hostess he was there to meet Vincent, and she immediately led him to a private dining room in the back. Vincent Cross sat at a large table with 2 bodyguards standing nearby. He was exactly as Jason had imagined, a well-dressed man in his 50s with cold gray eyes and an expensive watch. "Mr. Blake," Vincent said, standing up to shake Jason's hand. "Eddie tells me you're interested in our premium entertainment services." Jason forced himself to remain calm and play his role perfectly. "I've been looking for something more exciting than regular gambling or typical entertainment. Eddie mentioned you provide unique experiences for clients who can afford them." Vincent studied Jason carefully, looking for any sign that he might be lying or working with law enforcement. After a few tense seconds, Vincent smiled and gestured for Jason to sit down. "I've been in this business for 20 years, Vincent said. "I've learned to be very careful about new clients. But Eddie says you bet serious money at our warehouse event without blinking. That tells me you understand the value of premium experiences." They talked for over an hour about Jason's fake background and interests. Vincent seemed satisfied that Jason was legitimate, but he still wasn't ready to reveal the location of his most valuable dogs. "Our next premium event is this Saturday night," Vincent finally said. "The entry fee is $100,000, payable in cash only. If you're truly interested, meet Eddie at the Santa Monica Pier at 9 o'clock Saturday evening. He'll provide transportation to the event location." Jason agreed immediately. Even though $100,000 was an enormous amount of money, he knew this Saturday event was probably his only chance to find Max before Vincent sold him or moved him to another city. After leaving the restaurant, Jason called Marcus and the team to report what he had learned. They had less than 3 days to prepare for the most dangerous part of their mission. Tommy and David spent Friday scouting possible locations where Vincent might hold his premium events. Based on the high entry fee and need for secrecy, they guessed it would be at a private estate or isolated warehouse with good security. Carlos used his police contacts to learn more about Vincent's recent activities. He discovered that Vincent had recently purchased several expensive guard dogs and hired additional security personnel, suggesting he was preparing for something important. Saturday evening arrived faster than Jason wanted. He met Eddie at Santa Monica Pier with a briefcase containing $100,000 in cash. Eddie seemed impressed by Jason's commitment and treated him with more respect than before. "The boss likes clients who follow through on their promises," Eddie said as they walked toward a black limousine. "Tonight's event will be something you'll never forget." The limousine drove for almost an hour through winding roads in the Santa Monica Mountains before stopping at a large private estate hidden behind tall trees. Jason could see expensive cars parked everywhere and well-dressed people walking toward a large building behind the main house. Inside the building, Jason found himself at the most elaborate dogfighting event he could have imagined. The fighting area was surrounded by comfortable seating for about 50 wealthy spectators. Waiters served expensive drinks and food while everyone waited for the entertainment to begin. But Jason wasn't there to enjoy the luxury. His eyes searched desperately through every corner of the building, looking for any sign of Max. He saw several cages along the walls containing dogs of different breeds, but the lighting was dim and he couldn't identify individual animals clearly. When the first fight began, Jason forced himself to watch and pretend to be entertained, even though every minute felt like torture. He needed to maintain his cover while continuing to search for Max. During the break between fights, Jason excused himself to use the bathroom and took the opportunity to explore other parts of the building. In a hallway behind the main room, he found what he was looking for. Through a partially open door, Jason saw a smaller room with several cages containing the largest and most valuable dogs. And there, in the cage closest to the door, was Max. Jason's heart nearly exploded with joy and relief. Max looked thinner than before, and his eyes showed stress and fear, but he was alive and seemed uninjured. When Max saw Jason, his tail wagged slightly, and his ears perked up with recognition. Jason wanted to free Max immediately, but he knew that would be suicide with so many guards around. Instead, he memorized every detail about the room's layout and security before returning to the main event. Now he knew exactly where Max was being kept. Tomorrow night, when Vincent and his guards were distracted by their business, Jason and his team would return to bring Max home where he belonged. Sunday night was chosen for the rescue mission because Vincent's security would be lighter on weeknights. Jason and his team spent the entire day reviewing their plan and checking their equipment. They had studied the estate's layout, guard rotations, and security systems until they knew every detail by heart. Tommy brought night vision goggles and communication devices so the team could coordinate their movements in the dark. David had maps showing multiple escape routes in case their main plan failed. Carlos arranged for a veterinarian to be waiting at a safe location to examine Max immediately after the rescue. At 11 o'clock that night, Jason and his team approached Vincent's estate from the backside, where the forest provided cover. They had disabled their cell phones and removed anything that could identify them if they were captured. The plan was simple but dangerous. Tommy and David would create a distraction at the front of the property to draw guards away from the main building. Meanwhile, Jason and Marcus would enter through the back and locate Max. Carlos would remain with their escape vehicle, ready to drive them away quickly. Everything started perfectly. Tommy set off small explosives near the front gate that sounded like car backfires, but were loud enough to attract attention. Several guards ran toward the noise while Jason and Marcus slipped through the back door of the building. Inside, Jason led Marcus directly to the room where he had seen Max. The hallway was dark and empty, exactly as they had hoped. Jason's heart pounded with excitement as they approached the door to the dog room. But when Jason opened the door, his heart sank. The room was empty. All the cages were gone, and Max was nowhere to be seen. They had been planning this rescue for days, but Vincent had moved the dogs to another location. "They're not here," Jason whispered to Marcus, fighting back panic. "What do we do now?" Before Marcus could answer, lights suddenly turned on throughout the building. Alarms began sounding, and they could hear footsteps running toward their location. Someone had discovered their presence and alerted Vincent's security team. "We need to get out of here right now," Marcus said, grabbing Jason's arm. But as they turned toward the exit, they found their path blocked by Vincent Cross and 4 armed guards. Vincent was smiling coldly, clearly pleased that he had outsmarted them. Well, Vincent said. "If it isn't Mr. Richard Blake, the wealthy dog-fighting enthusiast. Except your real name is Jason Statham, and you're here to steal my property." Jason realized that Vincent had known his true identity all along. The entire weekend had been a trap designed to capture him. Vincent had probably moved Max to safety days ago and used the empty cages to lure Jason into a dangerous situation. "Where is my dog?" Jason demanded, no longer bothering to maintain his fake identity. Vincent laughed. Your precious Max is somewhere very safe, I assure you. But you'll never see him again. You made a serious mistake trying to interfere with my business, Mr. Statham. One of Vincent's guards pointed a gun directly at Jason's chest. Jason realized they were in serious trouble, but he refused to give up without a fight. All those years of action movie training were about to become very real. You have two choices, Vincent continued. You can walk away right now and never bother me again, or you can try to be a hero and end up very dead. Either way, you'll never see your dog again. Jason looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. They both knew they couldn't abandon Max, even if it meant risking their lives. Jason had come too far and sacrificed too much to give up now. I choose option 3, Jason said, and immediately launched himself at the nearest guard. The fight that followed was intense and brutal. Jason used every fighting technique he had learned for his movies, but now he was fighting for his life and for Max's freedom. Marcus fought beside him, using his military training to overcome Vincent's men. Vincent tried to escape during the confusion, but Jason caught him before he could reach the exit. They fought hand to hand while chaos erupted around them. Vincent was stronger than he looked, but Jason was motivated by love for his dog and determination to bring him home safely. Finally, Jason managed to pin Vincent to the ground and demand answers. Tell me where Max is, or I'll make sure you go to prison for the rest of your life. Vincent smiled even with Jason's knee on his chest. You're too late, Statham. Max was sold yesterday to a collector in Mexico. By now, he's probably hundreds of miles away. You'll never find him. Jason felt his world collapse. After everything they had risked and sacrificed, Max was gone to another country where Jason might never be able to track him down. But then Marcus shouted something that changed everything. Jason, look at this. Marcus called from across the room. He was holding Vincent's phone, which showed a text message that had arrived just minutes earlier. The message said, dogs delivered to warehouse as requested. Pickup scheduled for tomorrow morning. Vincent's face went pale as he realized his own phone had betrayed him. The message included an address in downtown Los Angeles, less than 20 miles from where they were fighting. Jason smiled for the first time in days. Max was still in Los Angeles, and now they knew exactly where to find him. Jason left Vincent tied up at the estate and immediately called Detective Rodriguez to report the location and evidence of the criminal operation. Then he and his team raced through the night toward the downtown warehouse address they had found on Vincent's phone. The warehouse district was dark and quiet at 2 in the morning. Jason's team approached the building carefully, but this time they weren't trying to be sneaky. They were prepared to fight anyone who stood between Jason and Max. Tommy used his military equipment to scan the building and confirmed that only 2 guards were inside. The team moved quickly and efficiently, overwhelming the guards before they could call for help or hurt any of the animals. Inside the warehouse, Jason found what he had been searching for during the longest week of his life. Max sat in a cage near the back wall, looking tired and scared but alive and unharmed. When Max saw Jason, he began whimpering and wagging his tail with desperate excitement. Jason's hand shook as he opened the cage door. Max immediately jumped into Jason's arms, covering his face with kisses and making happy noises that sounded almost like crying. Jason hugged his beloved dog and felt tears streaming down his own face. I'm sorry, boy, Jason whispered into Max's fur. I'm so sorry I let them take you. But you're safe now. We're going home. Max seemed to understand that their nightmare was finally over. He stayed close to Jason's side as they left the warehouse, refusing to let his human out of his sight even for a second. But their rescue mission wasn't finished yet. The warehouse contained over 30 other stolen dogs, all of whom needed immediate help. Jason called Detective Rodriguez again and requested animal control officers and veterinarians to care for all the rescued animals. By sunrise, the warehouse was filled with police officers, investigators, and animal rescue workers. Vincent Cross and 15 members of his organization were arrested at locations throughout Los Angeles. The evidence Jason's team had gathered led to the biggest dog-fighting bust in California history. Max needed several days of veterinary care to recover from his ordeal. He had lost weight and showed signs of stress, but he had not been seriously injured. More importantly, his gentle nature had not been damaged by his experience with cruel people. During Max's recovery, Jason never left his side. He slept on the floor of the veterinary clinic and fed Max by hand until the dog regained his strength and confidence. Slowly, Max began acting like his old self again, playing with toys and enjoying their daily walks. The legal proceedings against Vincent Cross took several months. Jason testified in court about the dog-fighting operation and Vincent's threats against him. The judge was impressed by Jason's determination to rescue his dog and expose the criminal network. Vincent Cross was sentenced to 15 years in prison for animal cruelty, illegal gambling, and organized crime. His entire operation was shut down permanently, and over 200 dogs were rescued from various locations around Southern California. The media coverage of the case made Jason a hero to animal lovers around the world. But Jason didn't want fame or recognition. He only wanted to spend time with Max and make sure nothing like this ever happened to them again. Jason used his celebrity status to raise awareness about pet theft and animal fighting rings. He donated money to animal shelters and worked with lawmakers to create stronger penalties for people who abuse animals. He wanted to make sure other families never experienced the pain he had felt when Max was stolen. Max seemed to understand that he had become famous for surviving his ordeal. He enjoyed meeting the reporters and photographers who came to interview Jason about their story. But his favorite moments were still the quiet times he spent alone with Jason, just the two of them enjoying each other's company.